When Al Franken was a senator, he actually put this in writing about his fellow member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Ted Cruz. Here's the thing you have to understand about Ted Cruz. I like Ted Cruz more than most of my other colleagues like Ted Cruz, and I hate Ted Cruz. There are a couple of extraordinary things about that statement. The first is that senators never give you the slightest hint of who they personally dislike in the Senate. No other senator has ever made a statement like that. But Al Franken was correctly confident that the one senator you could say that about in the history of the Senate was Ted Cruz. It just seemed so obvious to him how unlikable Ted Cruz is. The other extraordinary thing about that statement is that there was no rush of Republican senators jumping forward to say, that's not true. I love Ted Cruz. Not one senator was moved to rush to Ted Cruz's defense on the likability issue when it was raised by Al Franken. Amazing. Democratic Texas Congressman Colin ALLRED, who announced today he is running against Rafael Edward Cruz, seems to recognize that Texans don't vote for Ted Cruz because they like him. They vote for him simply because he's a Republican.
When I left the NFL, I thought my days of putting people on the ground were over. Then, January 6th happened. I remember hearing the glass breaking and the shouts coming closer. I texted my wife, "Whatever happens, I love you." Then I took off my jacket and got ready to take on anyone who came through that door. And Ted Cruz, he cheered on the mob.
We will not go quietly into the night.
Then hid in a supply closet when they stormed the Capitol. But that's Ted for you. All hat, no cattle. When Texans were freezing in the dark, he jetted off to Cancun. He'll do anything to get on Fox News, but can't be bothered to help keep rural Texas hospitals open. Spends months trying to whip up phony culture wars, but not a minute trying to raise wages or lower drug prices. The struggles of regular Texans just don't interest him. We deserve a senator whose team is Texas. But Ted Cruz only cares about himself. You know that. He wants to divide us, to get people to fear their neighbors and turn on their teachers. He'd ban books, outlaw all abortions, and cut Social Security and Medicare. That's not my Texas.
Joining us now is Texas Democratic Congressman Colin ALLRED, now a candidate for United States Senate. Congressman ALLRED, thank you very much for joining us tonight. There's many powerful elements of that announcement video today. But the line toward the end where you say to the Texas voters about Ted Cruz, you know that. You say, you know, he's only out for himself, and you know that. And you say that with a confidence that I find compelling, that the easiest case you're going to have to make to Texans is the singularly unlikability of Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I'm going to venture out on a limb here and say that most Texans do know that we can't count on Ted Cruz in a crisis. You know, him jetting off to Cancun when Texans were freezing in the dark, you know, wasn't just a joke. It was something that he turned his back on 30 million Texans who needed a senator who was doing everything he could to take care of them during that time. And Texans can't afford 6 more years of Ted Cruz in the Senate. And honestly, Lawrence, as you know, the country can't afford 6 more years of a senator who tried to overthrow an American presidential election. This is going to be a tough fight. I know that. But I've been in tough fights all my life. As I said in that video, I was raised by a single mother in Dallas, was a public school teacher. We struggled. I made it to the NFL, of course, to law school and to Congress. And we need your help. We need folks out there who understand that 30 million Texans deserve a better senator. If you care about this country, if you care about the state, go to COLIN and get involved with us.
You know, we keep tracking Democratic politics in Texas and trying to find the spot in the curve where a statewide Democratic vote could outnumber the Republican vote, which is to say, vote for a candidate. You can do that by pulling over some people who voted for Ted Cruz in the past. You can do that by pulling in independents, by pulling in some Republicans. What gives you the confidence that you can do it this time?
Well, I've done it before, Lawrence. You know, I beat a 22-year incumbent who was unopposed in the cycle before just to get to Congress. He was the chairman of the Rules Committee, one of the most powerful members of Congress, and we beat him pretty handily. And I think what we've shown, both in our campaigns and in my time in Congress, is that I try to bring folks together, try to cast a broad net. That anybody out there who's looking for somebody who maybe you won't agree on everything, but you understand that I care about you and your family, that I'm rooted in this community, in this state, that I'm going to go to work every single day to fight for you, then get on board with us. And we've seen in our races that folks respond to that. We can both, as you said, try and get folks who are looking maybe for a political home to give me a chance. But we also have worked on expanding the electorate and getting folks involved in our democracy who maybe weren't before. I think that's a winning formula anywhere, but it certainly has to be the approach here in Texas.
What do you expect to be the leading issues in this campaign a year from now when you're deep into the election year?
Well, the fact is, Ted Cruz is an extremist. He's an extremist who wants to ban all abortions, wants to make every decision for women in, I think, one of the most difficult moments in any woman's life. He's somebody who wants to cut Social Security and Medicare. He brags about that. He's somebody who doesn't try at all to actually solve any problems in this country. Over the last 10 years, when he's been in the United States Senate, he's used his position in the Senate to pit Americans against each other, to pit Texans against each other. He's honestly busier being a podcaster, which he does 3 times a week, than actually being a senator. Texans deserve a better senator, and we don't have to be embarrassed by our senator. We can get a new one, and that's the beauty of our democracy, and that's the chance that we have in this election.
As this year plays out, we're going to see Republicans staking out positions around the debt ceiling issue and also around budget issues going forward. The House that you're a member of, the Republicans there have already voted for massive cuts in federal spending. If they had their way, how would that affect Texans?
Well, they've also voted for massive cuts to services for our veterans. That's something that I'm most proud of. The work that I've done in my time in Congress is trying to help our veterans, opening a new VA hospital in my district. Listen, the Republicans are not at all serious about being fiscally responsible. They raised the debt ceiling 3 times during the Trump presidency. What they're doing now is trying to get a wish list of Republican policies by holding the American economy and honestly the global economy hostage. And some of these folks are just honestly not serious people, Lawrence. And that's the one thing that does very much concern me, particularly about some of my colleagues in the House, is that they have no intention of doing what's the right thing for the country. And so that's the danger that we're in right now. Many of the folks who I worked best with in some of my previous terms in Congress are no longer a part of their party because they've driven them out, like an Anthony Gonzalez in Ohio or even a Liz Cheney. And so, this is a more extreme version of this party than we've ever seen. And Ted Cruz is honestly the avatar of that. He is somebody who has basically shown the way in the leading in terms of extremism, in terms of divisiveness. He is somebody who has made our country a darker, more divided place, and we can do better.
Congressman Colin Allred, on your first night as a candidate for United States Senate, thank you very much for joining us on your first night as a candidate. Please come back during the campaign.
Will do. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. We'll be